My name is Carol Cullen, Industry Manager Healthcare, and let's begin. We are CareerSource Northeast Florida, and today our main topic is reimbursement funding program, as you know. Our agenda will include a brief overview of who CareerSource Northeast Florida is, what our services are, and our resources are. And then we'll go right into the customized training program, which is our funding program. And then we'll have time for Q&A, as I mentioned. So Northeast Florida, we are the Northeast Florida Regional Nonprofit Workforce Development Group. We serve 6 counties: Baker, Clay, Duval, Nassau, Putnam, and St. John's. We are the Workforce Development Organization, and we're a nonprofit organization as well. Our vision is to have a world-class workforce development system that enables our businesses to be leaders in the global economy. Our mission is to connect employers to talent and job seekers to careers and training. And we provide innovative, responsive services that exceed the requirements for careers of today and the future. We provide the region. We serve as the talent component of economic development. We work closely with JAX USA and the Chambers of Commerce. We link business with workforce and help recruit, retain, and reskill a qualified workforce in a variety of ways. We bring together partners in education, training, and transportation, and more. And we, the Business Services Department, serve as liaisons in the community. We help build workforce skills. The services that we provide for employers are many, and you can exploit all of our resources at our website. There's an employer tab at the top that says employers. And then within that, there's a contact the business services team, which you can use to reach out to us. Or, as I mentioned earlier, we will have a contact list of all the managers in our department. You can post your jobs at employflorida.com, which is the state of Florida's website. Additionally, we can post jobs for you. So if you would like our staff to post jobs on your behalf, we can do that. And employflorida.com, you can also look for labor market information, search for candidates, and so much more. You can participate in hiring events, in person and virtual. And nearly all of our services with CareerSource Northeast Florida are at no cost to you or the job seekers. There are some, which we won't go into today, but nearly all of them are at no cost. Every week we have Recruitment Wednesday at our Southside Beach Boulevard Career Center. And almost every month, we have virtual hiring fairs. If you want to explore the benefits of apprenticeship, we actually have our own apprenticeship manager who can work with you to see if apprenticeship is a great strategy for your organization to recruit and retain employees. Item 4 is that we can connect you with area education providers, which include high schools, community colleges, and colleges in the area. So, for example, if you'd like to connect with graduates, high school graduates or college graduates, you could participate in their job fairs. And finally, you can utilize our funding program to upskill your workforce, which brings us into the main presentation. Customized training is the name of our program for funding. It is a reimbursement funding program. It's a program that provides employers in our 6-county region with funding to assist in upgrading the skills of your employees. And this is a reimbursement funding program, which I mentioned. I'm going to stay on the slide for just a few moments to tell you that most of the funding is given to us by the federal government. And then we distribute it to employers who would like to use it in our region. Today, one of our main purposes is to share with you that we have funding now that we really want to allocate to you, our employers, so you can train your employees by the end of June 30th. So right now, we are eager to talk with employers who can create training projects or have some upcoming that could begin soon and end by June 30th. Also, our funding program is from July to June each year. So we don't always know if we get funds, we'll get them in late July, but we don't always know when we're going to, if we're going to get them and how much that's going to be. So again, the purpose of today is to share with you that we are looking for employers who would love to do training projects that will end by June 30th. We offer the program to increase the economic viability of our workforce here in Northeast Florida. Customized training requests should relate to the introduction of new technologies, new production or service procedures, workplace literacy, or an upgrade to new jobs that require additional skills. I bet if you think for a moment, you may right now think of some things. You're like, oh, I wish we could train for this. Like, we were thinking about doing this. So we would love to talk to you about your training projects. The training should provide an industry recognized credential or certificate that it demonstrates the advanced ability necessary to retain or advance in employment. So we are all about career pathing and upskilling. Note here that this funding is for credentials or certificates and not for degree seeking programs. And finally, the training is your choice. The training can be in-house or from an outside educational provider. You would want to consider using our funding program if you're already planning to offer training to your employees, or you're interested in retaining great employees who need skills training, or you have a job opening that could be filled internally within your own company, or lack of funding prevents you from offering training. But if you had some financial help or funding, then you could do the training. We reimburse employers a minimum of 50% of the allowable training costs up to $50,000 per employer for this program year, which I've already mentioned will end on June 30th. Applications are usually reviewed within 10 business days, and there is a very streamlined application. This is a visual diagram to show you that the employer is driving the project. The employer decides to work with CareerSource Northeast Florida as your funding partner, and then the employer decides to perhaps work with an outside training provider, and that would be your green line on the right. You might want to work with Florida State College at Jacksonville, First Coast Technical College, St. John's River State College, or more, or an online provider. So you would have a relationship and a contract with the training provider if you're utilizing an outside training provider, and then you would have a separate contract with us, your CareerSource Northeast Florida team. If you do an in-house project where you have your own staff doing the training, then you would eliminate this right green line. And then you would be also the training provider. And in that project, we are actually reimbursing the wages of the instructor who is doing the training. Basic criteria. The employer will, this is only for W-2 employees. You'll need to have at least one full-time employee, be current on your tax obligations, be ready to provide a W-9 and an I-9 for each trainee, and then pay for training up front. We're going to take a moment here just to summarize. So you, the employer, will identify the training need. You'll choose your in-house instructor or external training provider. You'll apply for the grant, and it will be approved, hopefully. And at that third item, sometimes there is some back and forth because we may have a question or maybe something was missed. And so sometimes there's some back and forth in conversation. Then the training begins. Intake packets are completed along with some other documents that are needed that first week of training. Then the training is completed, and you, the employer, will submit documents for reimbursement, and then we reimburse you. These are some of the items that are able to be reimbursed: tuition, instructor wages, percentage of curriculum development, training materials, and training supplies. This is really important because earlier I mentioned that we will reimburse up to 50%. So the other 50% is what the employer will need to contribute. And so this is great news because the employee wages that you're already paying while your team, your cohort, your employees are in training can be counted towards your 50% match. So that would be the trainee wages multiplied by the number of hours in training, and that amount can be put towards the project cost and towards your contribution. I've already mentioned the program year. Eligibility. The employees must be current employees, be a UN citizen or eligible non-citizen, making $29.99 or less per hour. Men need to be registered with selective service, and they need to each trainee needs to complete their own intake packet. We sometimes get special grants, and these many times are state related grants, and sometimes they have different guidelines or rules within the grants, but we would talk to you individually as you're pursuing a project and let you know what those, if there are different guidelines. So currently we have an artificial intelligence grant that we would love to share some of that funding with you if you're training your employees on AI. We have aviation and aerospace, healthcare, and some rural initiative funding for our rural counties. So, in summary, if you are interested in discussing a project or already have a project in mind, we ask you to contact your industry manager, and I'll have a list at the end. We encourage you to have an initial discussion about your training project. It is not required, but you will need to reach out to one of us to get the application. Then you would submit your application along with the employee wage list at least 10 days before the training begins. And then that wage list will be on company letterhead with the name, current title, wage per hour for each trainee. If your training is internal, you'll also submit the instructor wage list. And then training begins after approval. Now, I've mentioned the first week of training a couple of times. This is super important because once the training begins, we do need some specific documentation. We need the W-9, the I-9 for each trainee, that completed intake packet. And of course, we can give you samples of what that is, and a DD-214 if any of your trainees are veterans. It's a great time to point out that we encourage you, once you receive the application and are exploring this, to provide the application to your leadership team, your HR team, your legal team, so they can ask any questions and we can answer those questions so we don't have to delay any of the application or your training. And then it's the reimbursement process. So once training has totally ended, you will provide to your industry manager the invoices, proof of payment, and certificates of completion and/or grades for the completed training. And we reimburse for employees who successfully complete training. Then we ask you to partner with us after training is completed. The federal government has given you money to help you upskill your employees. And so they want to know, are those employees still employed and have their wages increased? So we always love projects that provide an increase in wage after employees are trained. While it is not a requirement, it is always preferred. And then once again, we encourage you to post your jobs in Employ Florida or allow our team to, so that we can assist you in filling those other positions you may have. That sums up the basic process and program. And now we're going into some of our partner companies and examples of customized training in our region. So you will recognize some of these big name companies and you may not recognize some of them. I'm going to just read a few and you can peruse them, but this list is certainly not 100. This is not 100% of the partners that we work with. But it does include an employer from every county that we work in. So we've got Barnabas Inc., Grace Aerospace, Logistics Services International, US Health, Jacksonville Physicians Inc., to name a few. Here are some healthcare examples of projects that I've actually worked with employers on. Again, I'm going to allow you to peruse the list. I'll name a few: medical assistants, nursing assistants, surgical technologist apprenticeship. And note here, this is an apprenticeship. Yes, our funding and help you fund apprenticeship training. These are examples for manufacturing, aviation, aerospace, aircraft assembler riveter sheet metal training, forklift certification. You can see another apprenticeship here, maintenance apprentice training. These are examples in transportation and logistics: forklift operator, standard operating implementation training, and trapeze, pass, and flex training. And these are examples that are more general and not industry specific. Spanish language training. I worked with an employer who needed Spanish language training for their frontline employees who work with Spanish speaking clients. And they just wanted their team to have some basic language skills, American Sign Language management training. If you don't see your industry reflected here, that is okay. It just means we are ready to work with you and add you to our list. These are the top trainings that are not covered. So we cannot fund CPR, basic life support, OSHA, software, and soft skills. These are our industry managers. You will see that we have key industries that that we work in, but we also, many of us work with other industries, and you can reach out to me or any of us, and we'll be happy to connect you with the right team. For example, while my main industry is healthcare, I also work with employers in accommodations and food service. You're welcome to take a picture of this if you'd like. Again, we will be sending this list out. And that concludes the formal presentation. And now I welcome your questions.
We do have one question in the chat, and it is, will you be sharing this recording?
Yes, yes, we will be sharing the recording, and within 2 weeks, we'll be sending out a follow-up email with all of the manager contacts and a link to the recording.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I was the one that asked about the recording. So we're not gonna get this recording until 2 weeks from now, is what you meant?
We hope it'll be before that, but there may be some editing that's needed. So the team that does the editing, they just it depends on them. But if you need information sooner or you missed part of the presentation, just reach out to one of us and we can review the program with you. If like you need to understand the program and miss part of it.
Yeah, is that I invited my leaders, and they were having issues logging into the Zoom. So I just wanted to go over it with them because they do have some things in mind, and I just think that 2 weeks from now it's gonna be too late. Um,
Mhm. Yeah,
so
so we'll be happy to connect. Do you know what your industry is, Rebecca?
we're manufacturing.
Okay. Well, Robin Fairclough is
Yes,
right there. Is
she's my
you and she?
connection.
There
Yeah,
you
she's my
go. You guys can have a conversation. So she'll be happy to talk with you about it.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And if anyone else needs, came on late or needs to see the presentation sooner than 2 weeks, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to do it again for you, one on one.